Jeanne and Ileen McFarland are going to kind of tell their story as regular everyday folks who are caregivers, who were caregivers. Jeanne is, Eileen used to be.
Thank you, Bill.
I imagine she still is.
Yes.
I don't know about that.
I think we're all caregivers at heart, really. So, yes, I was a caregiver for my late husband, Terry Watson, for several years. He passed in 2012 with PSP.
And I guess I technically am a caregiver for my husband, Rick, who was diagnosed with PSP. I had a stroke in 2012 and was diagnosed with PSP in 2016.
Before we get started, I have to say, the last one's on the agenda, and you all have to be just kind of over the top with all this information. I can't get over Angela's presentation. She said everything that we are going to talk about also. You've had so much information to leave here. I want to thank the Mayo Clinic, CurePSP, all of our sponsors for making this possible. Let's give them all a applause. You'll hear both of our stories, but first, I wanted to share this video with you. I saw it recently, and I was so moved, and I thought, you know, if I was still in this caregiving mode, this stressful situation, I think I would watch this video 2 or 3 times a day. I think it would really empower me to reach out and say, I can do this, I'm good. This video doesn't have anything to do with rare brain disease, but it has a lot to do with resilience. It's how to empower yourself and to find where your strength comes from and to believe that when you're in the worst situation, that you can get out of it because you care, or you wouldn't be doing what you're doing. So this video, it's an excerpt from a speech given by Admiral William McRaven at the University of Texas in Austin, class of 2014. And as I said, the content does not have anything to do with any of our rare brain diseases, but I think you'll see that they are dealing with challenges. So let's watch.
Change the world? Start off by making your bed. If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task, and another, and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made, that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. To pass SEAL training, there are a series of long swims that must be completed. One is the night swim. Before the swim, the instructors joyfully brief the students on all the species of sharks that inhabit the waters off San Clemente. They assure you, however, that no student has ever been eaten by a shark, at least not that they can remember. But you are also taught that if a shark begins to circle your position, stand your ground. Do not swim away. Do not act afraid. And if the shark, hungry for a midnight snack, darts towards you, then summons up all your strength and punch him in the snout, and he will turn and swim away. There are a lot of sharks in the world. If you hope to complete the swim, you will have to deal with them. So if you want to change the world, don't back down from the sharks. Over a few weeks of difficult training, my SEAL class, which started with 150 men, was down to just 42. There were now 6 boat crews of 7 men each. I was in the boat with the tall guys, but the best boat crew we had was made up of the little guys, the Munchkin crew, we call them. No one was over 5'5". The Munchkin boat crew had 1 American Indian, 1 African American, 1 Polish American, 1 Greek American, 1 Italian American, and 2 tough kids from the Midwest. They out-paddled, outran, and outswam all the other boat crews. The big men in the other boat crews would always make good-natured fun of the tiny little flippers the Munchkins put on their tiny little feet prior to every swim. But somehow these little guys from every corner of the nation and the world always had the last laugh, swimming faster than everyone and reaching the shore long before the rest of us. SEAL training was a great equalizer. Nothing mattered but your will to succeed, not your color, not your ethnic background, not your education, not your social status. If you want to change the world, measure a person by the size of their heart, not by the size of their flippers. The 9th week of training is referred to as Hell Week. It is 6 days of no sleep, constant physical and mental harassment, and one special day at the Mud Flats. The Mud Flats are an area between San Diego and Tijuana where the water runs off and creates the Tijuana Sloughs, a swampy patch of terrain where the mud will engulf you. It is on Wednesday of Hell Week that you paddle down to the Mud Flats and spend the next 15 hours trying to survive this freezing cold, the howling wind, and the incessant pressure to quit from the instructors. As the sun began to set that Wednesday evening, my training class, having committed some egregious infraction to the rules, was ordered into the mud. The mud consumed each man till there was nothing visible but our heads. The instructors told us we could leave the mud if only 5 men would quit. Only 5 men, just 5 men, and we could get out of the oppressive cold. Looking around the mud flat, it was apparent that some students were about to give up. It was still over 8 hours till the sun came up. 8 more hours of bone-chilling cold. The chattering teeth and the shivering moans of the trainees were so loud, it was hard to hear anything. And then one voice began to echo through the night. One voice raised in song. The song was terribly out of tune, but sung with great enthusiasm. One voice became 2, and 2 became 3, and before long, everyone in the class was singing. The instructors threatened us with more time in the mud if we kept up the singing, but the singing persisted, and somehow the mud seemed a little warmer, and the wind a little tamer, and the dawn not so far away. If I have learned anything in my time traveling the world, it is the power of hope. The power of one person, a Washington, a Lincoln, King, Mandela, and even a young girl from Pakistan, Malala. One person can change the world by giving people hope. So if you want to change the world, start each day with a task completed. Find someone to help you through life. Respect everyone. Know that life is not fair and that you will fail often. But if you take some risks, step up when the times are the toughest, face down the bullies, lift up the downtrodden, and never ever give up. If you do these things, the next generation and the generations that follow will live in a world far better than the one we have today. And what started here will indeed have changed the world for the better.
Every time I watch this, it takes me back to the moments, those hard moments in life when I was the caregiver for my late husband. It was that resilience that pulled me through those moments and stayed by his side for 7 years. It was a resilience that allowed me to handle a 6'3", 200-pound man getting in and out of a car, on and off of the toilet, in and out of bed. And you'll hear my story in a moment, but I wanted to say to you, did you get it? Did you get that? The sharks are those people that say, no, you can't do that. The sharks are the hospitals sometimes that don't know anything about the disease your loved one has and that you have to battle with. No, 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 don't do that. He has a DNR, or no, no, no. Emotionally upset just watching this, bringing back those memories, those times when you have to stand up and speak for that person that you're caring for. your loved one, whether it be your spouse, your parent, a sibling, a friend. Don't ever give up. Thank you. Jeanne.
Well, I don't do a lot of public speaking, but I've never had to speak after a general, or Eileen for that matter. How do I get our picture? Do I go to the next slide? Nope. Well, there's that's Eileen's picture. Okay. So I'm Jeanne Locke. We live here in Rochester. We arrived here in June 27 years ago for my husband's gastroenterology fellowship. This is a picture of our family in January of 2016. It's our daughter's wedding. Rick at that point had a stroke in 2012 and had not yet been diagnosed with PSP. This is also a portrait of a family who is praying for Parkinson's, praying it was Parkinson's, because at least we knew people who had managed Parkinson's. And this is through no fault of any physicians or lack of diagnosis. He just really didn't show a lot of symptoms until probably 2014. He was making good stroke recovery, but then clearly something was changing. He had been almost physically unaffected by his stroke. In fact, the joke was he told his speech pathologist she had 6 weeks to get him back to work. Well, she laughed, and we didn't quite achieve that. But he was making good progress, and then all of a sudden his speech, which was expressive aphasia, slowed down. He was appearing to be very apathetic. He was having trouble meeting people's gaze. He was falling. And of course, I didn't know what PSP was. I just thought maybe it was Parkinson's. So we did go to his internist, and his internist started us, on Cinemet, and we got to the wedding, and Rick walked our daughter down the aisle, gave a short toast, and then we visited again, and then we were referred to the neurologist. At that point, it was pretty clear that it was PSP, so we got that diagnosis here at Mayo. So our journey has been, ups and downs, and to speak to Angela's point, I have a coffee mug. I don't do it right as I'm laying in bed, but it does say, "Love is patient, love is kind." But it broke the other day. I don't know what that means, but it does help to remember that what he is doing is not because he wants to, but because of his disease. So my message today is very similar in that you know best what your loved one is going through. Advocate for your loved one because you see the changes daily that you can't see once you get to a neurologist or to a medical professional. I will also have to say that one of the things that has changed our lives tremendously is that dream team that you had up here. My dream team was up here. The PM&R physician, Dr. Motvik, who really encouraged all modalities of whether it was physical therapy, occupational therapy, massage, acupuncture, things that my husband as a physician would not have explored had a physician not prescribed them. So that got over that resistance. But we'll go on, but that's really our story. We went from a diagnosis in 2016 to this. I don't know if you've met my husband today, but he is wheelchair bound. He is still able to transfer himself, but he's still very engaged, even though he physically doesn't appear to be. He can still help me make decisions. And so this is our family, and this is what he lives for. Thanks. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. So this is Terry Watson, and we were on his bucket list cruise to Alaska. My family thought I had lost my mind. At that point, it was a year before he died, actually, almost to the day. But this is what he wanted, and I said, we can do this. I was a mess by the time we returned, but we had a great time there. We fell once or twice, but we found the staff on the cruise ship just very accommodating. So a little bit of history. So my husband was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2006. he showed signs of having Parkinson's at 2005. He was an avid golfer, and of course, being a golfer and having any kind of a movement disorder is a very dangerous place to be, and it really sets your golf game back big time. How many golfers do we have in the room that play golf? I know we talked yesterday. So anyway, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and then about 6 months later, I thought, you know, this is not Parkinson's. I have a friend or a couple of friends with Parkinson's, and there's something more wrong. It's accelerating. So we went to a couple of doctors, and one of them said, this is PSP at Johns Hopkins. And I said, oh, good. Well, okay, well, thank you. And I'm like, I wonder what PSP is. So I go home, and I start on the internet, and I went, oh, my God, this is wrong. This can't be possible. So we went to University of Maryland Disorder Hospital. Dr. Stephen Rich, who used to be on the board of directors for CurePSP, I did not know that at the time. And he said, it looks like PSP, but it could be CBD. It's really hard to diagnose at this. Of course, I knew nothing about anything at that point. So we went to Georgetown Hospital, where Dr. Pagan was also practicing in a movement disorder center there. And he said, this does look like PSP, but if you really want to be very, very sure, go see Dr. Eileen McFarland at the University of Kentucky down in Kentucky. She's performing some research there. So we did, and we went back 4 times. And she kept putting Terry through all of these tests. And she was convinced it wasn't PSP in the beginning. And she had seen a lot of people. She's an international doctor. And she said, I could have sworn this wasn't it. And I kept wondering, it could be this or that, and something less intrusive. But the final conclusion was it was PSP. So we went back to Maryland, and we had Dr. Rich as our neurologist. Dr. Rich was amazing. He was busy just like most of these neurologists, and he was very informed about these diseases. The one thing he clued me in on was this: you know your husband better than I do. I can tell you how to deal with this, but you need to educate yourself. You need to know, and if you see something peculiar during the process of the progression of the disease, call me or email me. He was in Germany once, and he answered my email. The bottom line was, I was very lucky, and so was my husband, to be able to have that kind of direction and support. Whenever I took my husband in for an appointment, which was every 6 months or once a year, because once you're diagnosed, there's really not much they can do unless you're in a training program, and that's what Terry was. Dr. Rich was training staff, and Terry was part of that. Anyway, every time I took my husband in to see Dr. Rich, he would deal with my husband, and then he would turn to me, and he said, now, how are you doing? I was like, whoa, I'm fine. I'm fine. Yes, fine. I mean, I was kind of like, why is he worried about me? I'm fine. After a few years of the progression and a couple of things I want to bring points to. One was, over a period of time in a marriage relationship, all of a sudden, you discover one day that you're no longer the spouse, you're the caregiver. That was probably one of the most painful things, to realize that I was there for him, but I was his caregiver. This relationship that we were in was gone. It wasn't there. So I was trying to make it better, but it didn't work. I had too many things to concern myself with. I had his care, and that was hard. Every minute of our day was taken up. I want you to know that all the things that you heard today that were good for you, I don't know why I did it, but I did it pretty much for my husband. He was in aquatherapy. He had a personal trainer. He had a personal masseuse. He had an acupuncturist, a chiropractor. We socialized all the time. We danced at 5 weddings when he was in a wheelchair. That we found out how to do that. We loved to dance. We did all these things to ensure one thing, quality of life. The best thing, the one thing he really enjoyed was aquatherapy. And if you have the opportunity to take aquatherapy, do it, because you know what? You can't get hurt if you fall in the water. It just feels good. He said, wow, this feels really good. Acupuncture, the stiffness in his legs and his arms just kind of disappeared. Not for a long time, maybe for 2 or 3 days or whatever. But the bottom line was, whatever we did, the massage, and by the way, his personal trainer, he went to 3 sessions with his personal trainer the week before he died. He was still exercising. They'd roll his chair up to this piece of equipment, and he would grab those weights in the thing and down and up his torso. He had very wide shoulders. This tux kind of hides it, but it kept his torso very strong. And that helped me help him get out of a car, to get out of bed. In that last several months of his life, he wasn't able to bring the strength forward that he did during the years before. And so I invested in an Invacare lift. But let me back up a minute. When I noticed my husband's depression, I talked to the doctor and they referred him to a counselor. This was actually what I'll call an end-of-life counselor. This counselor dealt with people who had terminal diseases. He was amazing. Richard was just an amazing man. And Terry was in counseling for about 6 months before he passed. And he really enjoyed those conversations with Richard where I wasn't present and he could say and do whatever he wanted and it wasn't going to hurt me. But one day the counselor came downstairs and he was getting ready to leave and he said, you know, Eileen, I'd like you to go into counseling. And I said, counseling? I'm fine. No, I want you to go into counseling. I said, I've never done that. I am perfectly fine. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself, my husband, everything around me. I'm good. He said, no, you're not. And if you don't do it, what I ask you to do, I'm not coming back. I said, are you threatening me? So I did go into counseling. And the moment I walked in the door, I said, June, I don't even know why I'm in here. I am perfectly fine. Sat down, burst into tears, and cried for 20 minutes straight. It was the best thing that happened. It wasn't because it was, and I'm talking to all you caregivers, whether you're spouses or children or friends. Several weeks into this therapy, she said, so what do you think you're going to do after Terry has passed? And I was like, what? Well, I don't know. But you need to think about that. I can't think about that. I have things to do here. I can't do that. And then she said, why not? I said, because I'm not going to give up hope. That's why. Because right to the very end, I am not going to give up hope. She said, it's okay not to give up hope. But you need to start thinking about your life. Your life is totally wrapped up in his life. If he died tomorrow, what would you do? I said, I can't even fathom that thought. And she said, well, maybe you should think about it. It was a good thing because it was several months, not even several months, 4 or 5 months later that he passed. And it was quite unexpected, by the way. Most of the time, it is unexpected. And these are uncomfortable conversations to have, but it's in all of our minds. How, when, where. Don't hide from it. We're all here on this planet to live a life, and we all know that one day we're going to die. But we live to die. And no matter where you are and what's going on in your life, while you're here, for God's sake, suck up life. No matter what your situation is. My husband never let the disease control him. We took an oath that this is something we were going to control. not have it control us. Maybe I took it a little beyond where it should have been, and it might have damaged me during the process until I was aware that I needed to do something about it as a caregiver, because I needed to take care of myself. Taking away the keys was the biggest trauma. A guy, you're going to take away my keys as my transportation. You know what? It had to happen because he got into an accident. Thank God it was a huge tree. Thank God he was in a huge Sequoia, van. Thank God nobody else was involved. And thank God the policeman didn't think. He thought that something was wrong, but I said, oh, he's had a slight concussion. I lied. But I said to him, well, he has PSP. He has a neurological disease. He might have taken his license away. He might have put me in jail. And if he had hit another person and killed someone, I could have been sued and he could have been sued. So I called his best friend and I said, Dave, you need to help me. And I explained what happened. He came over, said, Terry, we're going to go to lunch. When they came back from lunch, my husband went, here's your keys. I promised him I would drive him anywhere and everywhere, no matter. Oh my God, I hate to drive. I could have that driving Miss Daisy syndrome. I would love somebody to drive me everywhere, right, Bill? I don't like to drive. I am geographically challenged. I don't really know northeast, southwest, whatever. I just tell me how to get there and I'll get there. Thank God for Waze and navigation systems. But anyway, so I did. And you do things you don't think I didn't think I could do this. There's 18-wheelers on either side of me. I'm driving through the West Virginia mountains, taking him to his best friend's house, and I'm thinking, dear God, please don't let us die up here. I mean, I was terrified. And I know that doesn't sound like a big deal to most of you, like drive, but to me, I'm telling you, I was terrified. But I did it, and I knew I had to come back. I thought, oh my God, that's all I could think about the whole weekend. I got to drive back. We made it, obviously. So anyway, the lift chair, when my husband started getting very ill towards the end and I was having difficulty, I called our support group, and CurePSP was really my lifeline. And they weren't then as advanced as they are now in terms of reach-out programs. And I can tell you that the support group that I went to in Annapolis, Maryland, which I ended up facilitating for about 4 or 5 years, was my lifeline. And Terry's, he wouldn't miss it for a minute. And we had a hospice representative come to our support group and speak to us. The patients and the caregivers going, oh, hospice, hospice. I said, oh, for God's sake, it's not end-of-life hospice. It's called palliative care. It's called helping you help your loved ones. When you say hospice, people think, death. This is it. They're going to start punching morphine in me and kill me. No, 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 no. This is palliative care. And so I was the first one to call hospice. Hospice comes in, they send a representative. My husband's sitting there, obviously can't walk, can barely talk, can't move, can't feed himself, can't watch out. Okay, so they're checking off their list. And she said, well, I don't even know about this disease. I said, do you know about ALS? Oh, yes, we have ALS patients. I said, well, it's practically the same thing. So just go away and put it in your computer and let me know what's going on. You will end up taking my husband into your care. And they did. The next day, the nurse was at my door. And I said, oh, for heaven's sake. She said, nobody called you? I said, no, actually, they led me to believe that he wasn't going to be in the program, that he didn't qualify. So she assessed the situation. She said, oh, wait, he qualifies. So they were very helpful. 3 times a week, the CNAs came, helped me shower him. And he had, when I could do it, I could go out. They had a volunteer that would come in and help. They had a nurse come once a week. They provided equipment. So in that last period of Terry's life, when I couldn't handle this big guy anymore, because could I really lift up 200 pounds, 6'3"? No. He was really helping me. Well, anyway, I saw this video, and I think it was through CurePSP. There's this 80-year-old woman. She filmed her husband, who had PSP, with this Invacare lift, and she was demonstrating it. 80 years old. She said, my husband's sitting in the chair. I'm going to put this little thing around him, and then I'm going to put this other thing around the thing, and then I'm going to put his feet on it, and then I'm going to press this button, and from a sitting position, it goes. And you're standing on this round thing, so when you're completely up, then I could just take it and move it around. I could move it around the whole house, into the toilet, into the bedroom, into the TV room. I thought, and they said, well, our supplier probably doesn't have that. I said, well, they can just get it. You have ALS patients, right? And they need it. The Hoya lift, forget it. You don't want to know what I know about the Hoya lift. I said, there's no way I could pick him up. My friend almost dropped her husband on that darn thing. So they took the Invacare, they went to the supplier, and she called me and said, oh, you know what, we have a new supplier. I said, you be sure to tell him. He will make his money 10 times over. That automatic lift is going to make him a lot of money. It's $7,000. And how many ALS patients do you have, and how many PSP? You have 2 now. Multiply, do the math. And the owner of the company came to my house with this lift, and he said, I just wanted to meet you because you know what? I said, you don't have to tell me. And you know what? You should give me 20% of the take, buddy, because I'm the one that talked you into this. So anyway, that was a godsend. The reason I'm telling you this story, 2 reasons. Since then, I have been facilitating support groups in Maryland and now in Dallas, Texas, my husband and I, my present husband. And getting people into hospices is like an act of Congress because they're all different. So I have to train them. I have to say to them, what are you talking about? This person should continue to take PT. Just because they're in hospice palliative care does not mean that they have to give up PT. Here's a directive from Medicare. It clearly states, and it's endless for PT, for quality of life. And you need to go back and look at your charter and look at your rules. And if they didn't work, there's millions of them. My point being, do not ever take no for an answer. If you really want something bad enough, if you really think that this is going to help you, if you really think it's going to help your loved one, keep pushing. Don't give up. Follow what the Admiral was saying. Those guys in that mud, you're going to be in the mud 1,000,000 times before your journey's over. But while you're in that mud, start singing. And by the way, song will get you out of a lot of trouble. That my anger level was beyond. I'm part Italian, so you know I'm a crazy woman. And right, Bill. So my point, what I'm trying to say is, you know, you just really need to control those emotions, but don't take no for an answer. Try to be as resilient as you can. Very quickly, I think I covered all the points there, and probably too many, but you know, I go down these bunny trails and I just do what I'm going to do. The CurePSP organization has a booklet, which we don't have here, unfortunately, but they will mail you one. Please, there's two documents that I'm going to talk about, and either see Sabrina or Jacqueline. She'll direct you to the right person. Jacqueline's over here. Or see Mary over there, and she'll take the information. But this booklet for a care partner is amazing. It's an excerpt from a guidebook that I'll tell you before we close. But this booklet has all of the information that will be helpful to you. I'm almost feeling like I'm repeating what Angela covered in her talk, but very quickly. There are 7 deadly emotions that we deal with as caregivers. Be aware of them. They should be on your refrigerator. You should look at them every day and say, okay, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try. But again, and I back up what Angela said, cry. If you really get upset, if you just think, I'm not going to cry, scream, run. But whatever you do, get it out. Don't let it eat you up inside, because it's only going to make you sick. It will make you sick. And if you get sick, who's going to take care of your loved one? That was my biggest fear. So, man, I was going to stay well. And I did. So, the first one is guilt. Jeanne, do you have any stories on guilt?
Oh, yeah. Are they serving dinner? Guilt comes in a lot of ways, and the most immediate one, of course, is how many times have you lost your temper and felt terrible about it because you really do know fundamentally it's the disease and not the person. How many times have you had to tell somebody, your loved one, over and over again not to do something? But I'll tell you, my guilt right now is, because we've progressed, is that I didn't appreciate what skill he had when he had it. So wherever you are on your journey, and I'm kind of in the beginning because I have not reached out for support as much. Eileen has gone through the tunnel. Every day, and you can't even talk about the day, maybe every hour, take an hour and just think about what your loved one can do still. Because unfortunately, this disease works in another week, month, year, 2 years, they may not be able to do that again. So that's my guilt, is when I became frustrated with something that he couldn't do, that I wish he could do now.
That's a good point. Guilt for me, of course, I just said, was losing my temper. And I did that a couple of times. And then I walk away going, oh, my God, I beat myself up. And then I felt bad. And then, it's negative, negative, negative. And how can you have resilience when you're going down into that dark hole? You can't. So please be careful of that. And the other thing is lower your standards from ideal. I'm a perfectionist. And you can't be a perfectionist and deal with a job, a household, and taking care of your loved one. So what is your highest priority? Yourself, take care of yourself, and then take care of your loved one. All that other crap, it doesn't make any difference. If the house stays dirty, it stays dirty. If you doesn't get that laundry done, it's not going to get done. It'll get done when it's going to get done. But make your bed in the morning, because I'm telling you, that does work. Resentment. Resentment is when a caregiver's life feels hijacked. Oh, woe is me. By responsibility and out of his or her own control. There's really so many examples I could give of this. When you feel resentment, you're not performing at your best. So be cautious of resentment. If you feel like you need to talk about it, confide in somebody close, somebody that's not going to judge, a good friend, a relative, or a counselor. But don't let resentment eat you up as anger does. I want to say here, and then I'm going to ask Jeanne to give an example of her own, is the CurePSP organization not only has support groups, one-on-one live support groups, but they also have online support groups nationwide. You can get that off of our website. And we also have what is known as peer volunteers. Peer volunteer are people who sign up who have been through this journey and who will be able to take your calls, whether you're a patient or a caregiver. So keep that in mind. Jeanne?
Resentment is a terrible feeling, especially when you're dealing with somebody who you love who is not in control. But you have to feel it. I think partly it's because of, at least in our situation, for Rick's inability to express thankfulness or compassion. And you can be a saint, but you still need some kind of positive reinforcement. And who are you with all the time but the person who sometimes seems to be resisting the care that you're trying to provide? So resentment's it's a bad one, but it's natural, and I think you have to acknowledge it and again remind yourself somehow that it's not their fault, but it's a tough one.
So anger, direct triggers for anger are unfair criticism, perhaps mishaps and Indirect triggers are, the biggie is lack of sleep, lack of control, pent-up disappointments. This can cause serious health issues. I can tell you more than once, my anger level, as I said, was beyond my control. Going into counseling was the best thing I did. I didn't realize and didn't understand in the beginning that my husband wasn't actually getting out of his chair because he was trying to upset me and fall down on the ground. He was getting out of the chair because he had to go to the bathroom. And if you have to go to the bathroom, what do? You get out of the chair. He wasn't thinking, I have PSP, I need to think about this, I'm not going to get out of the chair. No, that's not the way it works. It's an impulse. It's a human impulse. Get out of the chair, go to the bathroom. So when I started realizing that, I thought, well, why am I getting upset? It's not his fault. It's not his fault, it's the disease. Start recognizing what this disease is.
Anger's another ugly one. But I'm a reader, and I just was reading just a novel, a good escape, when I was awake enough to read. And I read one line that just jumped out at me. And the phrase was, anger is the companion of fear. So when I am angry, when I lash out or do something, it's because something unexpected has happened, and it frightens me. And it frightens me because of the safety issue. But I think profoundly what it really is I'm afraid of what that means. I'm afraid of that it's a sign of a progression that we can't control. So, again, back to Angela's mindfulness, try to understand what that anger comes from. And again, it's obviously made worse by fatigue and all of those other things and stress. But for me, a lot of times it's just fear.
And again, as Angela said, learn to express this in healthy ways. And one of them was the deep breathing exercise. Actually, I learned how to do that, and it always worked for me. Talk yourself down. Soothing chants. Dear God, help me. Dear God, please be with me. Help me do this. Get me through this. Please, 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 please. And if you do the chant, and pretty soon it convinces you that you're going to be okay. It's okay. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to. And if you can laugh, laugh. I could never laugh when I was angry, though. I don't know why.
I would have to tell you one thing. The one thing that's helped me is, and I sound like an abuser. I mean, but explaining to my husband, I'm really sorry that I got so angry, but this is why. Just putting words to my perhaps irrational emotion, perhaps rational emotion, but taking that next step. I don't know if it makes him feel better, but it makes me feel a whole lot better.
Apologies usually do. Okay, worry. Oh my gosh, worry about this, worry about that. Good intentions, love, and wanting the best for your loved one can cause worry. Worry leads to so many negative things, but sometimes we just worry about everything. I think that if you are worrying, and I've tried this, because, again, being an Italian, we worry about everything. We worry about, if the sun's going to set. It's ridiculous, but if I could take my mind off of it and start thinking about something else, and then my worrying would dissipate. If you're worrying about a specific thing, that was easy. I could hit it head on. I'd go after it head on, solve the problem, or find a solution that maybe wasn't what I thought was good, but I could move on to the next thing. So try not to turn worry into an illness, because it can really grab you, and you don't need to be worrying. You got enough things to do to be worrying about things you can't control, and there are a lot of things you can't control.
So I deal with worry by doing, but it's so I've come to accept that we have this progressive disease. I've come to accept that at this point, because of Rick's stroke, he was excluded from all of these studies that potentially could have wonderful effects. We've kind of given up on compassionate use. So what I do is I focus on what we can do, and that helps my worry. So whether it's going on, as somebody said yesterday in support group, Dr. Google, and seeing what is possible. whether it's physical therapy. We were fortunate in Rochester to have exercise abilities, so we were able to employ an exercise team and do the aquatherapy. So for me, I can put worry aside by working on practical things. That's how I deal with worry. Not that any of us will ever stop, but at least it helps divert it a little bit into something that to me is more positive. Because none of us, as we said, none of us knows how long our life is going to be. And my focus is just quality of life and balancing. So there's the safest way to live, the safest way to keep my husband alive, which is pretty boring. And then there's what makes him happy. So sometimes it's, don't tell anybody, but it's his 5 o'clock scotch. And now, the compromise is it has to have thicket in it, or he has to use the regulating straw. But, the safest thing is to not do that. The safest thing is, good Lord, not let him go off with his 4 brothers on a golf outing. But that's who he is. So I have to just trust that he will be fine. And so that's how I deal with worry, is just to try to balance what's the safest and what makes life worth living.
Thank you, Jeanne. I'm getting the, so we're going to run through the next 3 items pretty quickly, and then we'll close. But loneliness, don't isolate yourself. Get out there. Get your loved one out there. Socialize. Pull your friends in. Don't let them run away. Pull them in. They're afraid of what you're afraid of. You just bring them in. Your family too. Just keep loneliness out of your life.
Be aggressive about that. And don't feel like you have to have your house perfect or anything. Just invite people over for a drink. Make them come. It does make a difference for your sense of isolation. And I think their biggest fear is, can I talk to him? I'm like, good Lord, talk to him. He's still there. So I think that constant reminder is as important to your mental health as it is to your loved one. Don't isolate yourself.
Grief. Grief is not linked with death in this case. It's linked with the loss of your loved one as the disease progresses and you feel they're pulling away. It's the long goodbye. I'm sure a lot of you have seen some of the documentaries on Alzheimer's. This is not dementia, but this is a person that you knew that is still the same person in their mind, but they can't do anything or everything they used to do. And so in your heart, you're going through grief. Again, you need to seek out counseling or seek out a friend or share that even with your loved one. Be honest with one another. Talk to one another. Terry and I did. He looked at me and said, I'm dying. I'm going to die. I said, well, you're not dead yet, and I'm right here. And you're going to be okay while I'm here. We're going to be good. He said, all right, what are we going to do? I said, I don't know. We'll go dancing. Let's go dancing. But, just recognize that. And the last one is defensiveness. I'm right, you're wrong. You're not going to take anybody's opinion about anything. It's either my way or no way. I learned that it was really after my husband's death that I realized, oh my gosh, I didn't let anybody tell me or help me. I didn't listen to anything they said. And through these kinds of conferences, I learned I should have tried that. I should have listened to somebody. So keep your ears open, your mind open, and make sure that you reach out when you need to. Did you want to say anything on that?
I'll just say something quickly. How many of you have your hackles have gone up when somebody said, have you ever tried? And you're like,
and what do you know?
Kidding me?
Perfect.
No, I never thought of that. Oh, that'll solve the problem. Try not to have that feeling, because in that, it usually comes from a place of love and trying to help. And quite often there's sometimes a germ of truth in it that you can then go to Dr. Google and figure out what really are they saying. And sometimes they see things. We're in the forest, we just see the trees. And sometimes people, you can really benefit from a little bit higher a view, especially when you're really in the mud. So try not to feel that, but boy, It's a beauty, isn't it? They do that.
I want you all to know that in the support group with the patients yesterday, I talked about this book, hoping that we would have it here, and either it accidentally didn't get shipped, or it was shipped and it hasn't arrived, whatever the case may be. This is a guidebook. It's been published just fairly recently. It's addressed to patients, to caregivers, to families, to neurologists, to OT-PTs, all of the clinicians. It also addresses legal things, believe me. Make sure your legal papers are in order. That's very important. Make sure that your power of attorneys, medical power of attorneys, etc., are in order. You don't want somebody else making choices for you. I'm speaking to the patients. You want to get it out there. My husband's desire was his ashes to be taken to Ballybunion, 17th hole, Old Course, Ireland, and I did it. I won't tell you that story. That's too long. But anyway.
Probably illegal.
Yep. I did tell them while it was happening because they sent a guide out with me because I couldn't play golf, and they won't send you out without a guide. Anyway, so please see someone either at our PSP table or chaplainers, and they will take your name and number or direct you as to how to get this guidebook. Also, this did not get included either, and this is an excerpt from this guidebook for Carepartners. So please, this is free, and you can they'll mail one to you. So please ask for everything we talked about today, pretty much as far as caregiving, what we covered, and actually what Angela covered is kind of in here. So take it. It's been a pleasure speaking at this conference. I've done it more than once. I enjoy very much meeting all the caregivers and all the patients. Take care of yourself. God bless you. And try to live your life. Thank you.
Okay, before Bill takes me off, I just want to say one thing. I really want to thank all the people who have devoted their life to this research, because from a diagnosis that says 7 to 10 years, I think you, with the possibility, maybe not for my husband, but hopefully for your loved ones, it really changes the narrative to here's your death sentence to there's hope. So keep trying. I mean, my heart goes out to the people who are researching this very rare disease. So thank you to all the folks who are out there doing that.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you.